Great, welcome back. So we move on to our second session of the day, and today's session is a panel, and we've amassed a number of people with considerable experience, both from within the N8 Policing Research Partnership and some of our colleagues from allied police academic partnerships across the UK. And what we're going to do is ask each of them to just very briefly outline what they see as some of the key lessons from the period. And we're going to start off with Nicole Westmarland, who for the duration of the Catalyst Grant was one of the deputy directors of the N8 Policing Research Partnership, a professor at Durham University. So Nicole, over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about, you might not be surprised given my subject area, around policing domestic abuse and how that kind of rose in prominence during the time of the Catalyst project and the partnership in general. I want to argue that domestic violence and abuse has moved from the margins to the centre of both policing, policy and practice, and part of the importance of that has been underlined by the theme which I co-led with my colleague Donna Marie Brown at Durham around knowledge exchange and partnership working. When you look back around how domestic violence work became how domestic violence research has happened in partnership with policing. We see that the first phase around the 1960s to around 1990 had very little engagement actually between researchers and the police, and that did exist was mainly around feminist academics, and there was quite a lot of animosity, little understanding around why police and academics should be working together. Some of the groups that were, and police forces which were particularly influential around that time would be West Yorkshire and the work that they were doing with people like Jalna Hamner at the time, and some women's aid groups and rape crisis centres. Phase two of this kind of partnership working started to happen between 1990 and 2000 and was really around an acceptance between the police and researchers around this work needing to happen. It started to be mediated by the Home Office, the Scottish Office, and policing specialist teams started to be set up. Phase three saw some pretty big investments and some pretty big things around domestic violence and abuse policing. We saw during this time the ESRC violence initiative, which was led by Professor Betsy Stanko. And we also saw the new Labour plans around this time as well to develop the crime reduction programme, which was led by Alana Diamond in the part around the Violence Against Women initiative. So these were some really big, important initiatives. And I would argue that phase four would be the early 2000s onwards, and that would be include the work of the N8 Policing Research Partnership. This developed a more kind of partnership-based, more equal approach. It wasn't academics coming to the police and saying, we want to do this research. It was more about this kind of partnership approach to developing the questions, developing the methods. And I think that the N8 Policing Research Partnership has really, really been a key, not only example of this, but I think it has also just really cemented those relationships. And I also think it's brought new researchers into the field of domestic violence and policing who otherwise weren't doing this initially. If you look at kind of where we were when we started the partnership, we had themes of work that we wanted to do, but we didn't have subject specific. We didn't have topics that we felt that we needed to research. The topics which have come up have really come up from the bottom up. They've come from our steering group meetings, they've come from our innovation forums, they've come through our small grants, our knowledge exchange partnerships. And these topics have quite often included questions which either had domestic violence and abuse policing as a side topic or as one of the key topics. And I mean, you can see that anywhere when you look at the website, at the projects which have been completed, but also when you look around the programme for this conference and you see the events which are in place for today and tomorrow. So I do want to just show you one of the outputs briefly that we have been working on, which we have funded as part of the Knowledge Exchange theme of work. And it's thanks to Pam Davies and Mike Rowe at Northumbria University. And it does feature very briefly the work of Stuart Lister and body-worn cameras. Now, if he's watching, you don't need to worry, I'm not going to show the whole thing and steal your thunder for your presentation later. I'm just going to show the start of the video so that I can show you examples of the sorts of things that have been produced under this theme. So I'm just going to attempt to show it now. The video itself I think is around 6 or 7 minutes long, but I am just going to show the first 2 minutes.
The year ending March 2019, an estimated 2.4 million adults aged between 16 to 74 years old experienced domestic abuse. This included 1.6 million women and 786,000 men.
Domestic abuse is a much more common problem than we perhaps would like to imagine in British society. It's an extremely significant problem in terms of demand on police time and resources, and of course also, more importantly, very significant in terms of the damage that's done to survivors and their families and the wider community.
The main challenges that the police face in policing domestic abuse is just the sheer volume of the crime that is actually happening. You know, when you look at the types of offences which are reported to the police, then we see that up to a quarter of all incidents can be domestic abuse related.
Through the N8 Policing Research Partnership, police forces and universities collaborated on research projects centred around domestic abuse.
What was unique about the Policing Research Partnership is that instead of encouraging universities and academics to work by themselves in silos, it encouraged them to work together in partnership to look at these bigger issues. By bringing universities and police forces together, we hope to be more innovative, both in research around policing, but also in terms of the practice and policy development.
One project explored the impacts of police use of body-worn video cameras at incidents of domestic abuse.
The reason we looked at police use of body-worn cameras is because this is a new technology which police are increasingly using, and they're often in the context of trying to improve their response to domestic abuse.
During the research project, data was collected from police and prosecutors to review the success of using body-worn cameras at incidents of domestic abuse.
Video from playing.
Firstly, the cameras were seen to produce really valuable corroborative evidence.
Okay, so I just wanted to show that video again. I'm not going to go into the findings because I know that this is one of the sessions which is planned for this afternoon. I just wanted to really end on kind of saying that where I see ourselves now is in a much stronger position compared with at the start of the partnership. We have excellent relationships in terms of the policing partners, but also in terms of the academics working together and not working in silos, and being encouraged, in fact, to join up with our colleagues with different skills and in different universities to really work together and make a difference to policing domestic abuse. Thank you for listening.
Nicole, thank you very much. We're going to move straight on to Steve Brookes from Manchester University, who was the other Deputy Director during the N8 Catalyst grant. And Steve's going to provide his reflections now. Over to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Adam, and good morning. Just a quick check. Can people see my screen okay?
Looks great, Steve.
Great, thank you. Okay, just a few minutes in which I want to talk about the Innovation Forum, and I really want to begin by emphasising the very clear links that you'll see between the Innovation Forum, what Mike was talking about in his keynote, and also linking into the projects that Nicole has just talked to you about. So the Policing Innovation Forum, its main purpose is to be this dynamic engine right at the heart of the N8 programme. And we worked very, very closely with the Small Grants Fund and all of the other streams within the N8 programme. And what I want to emphasise in the few minutes that I have here is really to underpin the importance of not just innovation and policing, but also the leadership role, which is really my huge passion in terms of both practice and academic enterprise. So innovation and leadership are two sides of the same coin. And I want to pick up on 2 points that Mike made this morning in his keynote speech. One is that innovation is very, very difficult. It certainly is. And also linking into what Adam was talking about by the messy issues that we deal with. And it's very much about the wicked problems that we face in society and the interactive nature of those social issues. And in relation to innovation challenges as well, again, emphasizing what Mike has said, that it does challenge conventional wisdom. And I think that's something that we need to acknowledge. And certainly one of the leadership arguments is that it's very difficult to actually constructively challenge what's happening in a leadership environment. So the real challenge for innovation in policing is for the leadership to create the conditions that enable innovation to flourish, and not only that, to encourage the wider possible collective input to innovation, because the sum of the whole is much greater than its individual parts. So innovation in policing, very, very important. And the role and focus of the N8 really has been to develop the networks across academia and policing, and we've had a very close and very productive working relationship with police partners throughout the 5 years. And I hope what I'll show is they just give you the key themes that we've developed over the last 5 years or so, is that it's been driven very much by the policing, the senior policing practitioners, and linking that into research. So in terms of innovation, the partnerships are really, really important. So what I want to do is to give you a thumbnail sketch of how we progressed over the 5 years. And the theme of vulnerability, we didn't start off with this, but it emerged quite early on. And the first forum that we held in 2015 was actually looking at cybercrime. And cybercrime, again, is something that is still, it's still a huge problem for policing, and one that requires very much a joined up approach if we're going to respond to this in the future. And what I've highlighted here is that 50% of applications for the small grants in that first year related to the outcomes of the Police Innovation Forum. And that sort of percentage is applied throughout its history. And again, some of the projects that Nicole was talking about are influenced very much by the Police Innovation Forum, which I'll come on to describe. So responding to cybercrime was very much the first topic that we looked at for the Innovation Forum. And when we look back and reflect on this, vulnerability is actually part of an issue for the whole of society. In the second year, in 2016, again, very much influenced by our policing partners, and Nicole and her colleagues were clearly very much involved in this as well, is we shifted the focus to domestic violence, and particularly coercive and controlling behaviours. And one of the good practices that we introduced here was to include a highly emotive and live performance of a play called Rattlesnake. And this very much showed the horror of living within a domestic life with these behaviours. And I've just got an example here of a photograph that was undertaken of that live performance. and we were delighted that that was actually sponsored by the PCC for Durham at the time. And you can see this response here, that it was very well received by participants at the forum. So that was the second Police Innovation Forum in 2016. And we then moved the focus on in 2017 and started to look at the theme of early intervention in domestic violence. What we were able to do in this particular instance was to use a number of non-domestic violence areas in the afternoon workshops to show how lessons could be learned from other sectors who were dealing with similarly interactable social problems, which require a collective leadership approach and collaborative work in reducing community safety. And vulnerability also emerged very strongly through this particular theme as well. In year 4, our focus then moved to policing mental health. Again, a very much a topical area today. And it's about reducing police demand and keeping people safe. And professional actors played out a scenario based on a real life encounter here. And again, using footage from a body cam worn by an officer who's attending a violent and potentially life-threatening situation in the Metropolitan Police. So this really caught the attention of all, and the actors really played out a very realistic scenario. And the use of actors also we also had in year 1 with cybercrime. So one of the themes that we try to introduce throughout the innovation forums is an innovative way of bringing these issues to the fore. And this particular scenario was responded to very well. And then in 2019, last year, the final innovation forum of this particular funding was tackling knife crime. And again, a hugely successful event. And one of the learning points from this is, for the first time, we actually took our forum to where the problem was actually being played out. And we held our forum at Everton Football Club and worked very closely with Everton in the Community, a charitable organisation. And I have to say that we were very proud of the fact that many of the sessions during this session were actually led by third sector organisations to show just how impacted these problems can be. And it was sort of led by an example from Sarah and Fez from Cheshire. I know Karen was heavily involved in this as well, who presented their preventative approach to tackling knife crime at this event. And again, we had some really awe-inspiring presentations from colleagues who were coming along to this. So you can see how vulnerability has emerged. And I think that has developed because of the very close working relationship between ourselves as the academics, but working very closely with the policing partners through the steering group. So I just want to draw together some key lessons from the last 5 years and sort of fast forward that into tomorrow's session, which Jeff Pearson, who jointly led the Innovation Forum with me, will be carrying the flag for that. So how do we create synergy across partners? We've learned tremendous lessons on working together, and we need to build on that. What are the barriers to using and instigating research? This was very much a key part of our discussion right at the beginning of the forum, when we acknowledged that it's very difficult to take that work. So, for example, if those of you who are old enough to remember John Stevens' report on beating crime way back in the 90s, do we borrow with pride as opposed to not invented here syndrome? So we need to be much more open to that. Is knowledge exchange still limited by this not invented here syndrome? And how do we make more time to innovate? Time is a real currency of leadership. It's a currency of innovation. And to create that time, picking up on what Mike said in the keynote, leaders need to create the environment to allow innovation to emerge. So one of the key points for me that I'd like to put forward into the debate for discussion for the future, is there a role for leadership? So that's that really is a very short thumbnail sketch of the benefits of having the Innovation Forum. I'm delighted to say that many of the projects that came out of that fed into the small funding pot that we'll be hearing about later today. And I've got no doubt that it's going to add much strength to the future of N8 beyond today. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, colleagues. It's been a pleasure to work with you all on this exciting part of the N8 strand.
Steve, many thanks. I'm going to move straight over to Karen Byrom, who was introduced in many senses by Steve there. Karen is from Cheshire Constabulary and has been a very prominent member of the N8 Policing Research Partnership Steering Group. So, Karen, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me? Is everything all right? Can you see, am I sharing or not?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Perfect. Okay, so morning all, I'm Karen Byrom. I'm the lead for research analysis at Cheshire Police and Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service. I'm just going to do a quick whistle-stop tour around my views around the value, challenges and lessons learned from the N8 PRP. So, is it moving or? Okay, are we moving through the slides here? Can you see that?
You're still on the lessons.
Yeah, so the N8 PRP, so in real basic terms, I think there's some real value in having conversation, and a conversation that exists across different disciplines, agencies and localities. This diversity of thought is integral to instigating new and forward-thinking ideas, concepts and strategies. The N8 PRP has provided Cheshire with opportunities to create an evidence base in areas where there's been little existing or current knowledge. It's given us opportunities to upskill and invest in our staff and analysts through professional development programmes and knowledge exchange events. And through peer learning, we've professionalised our own internal procedures through the development of research request processes, research maps, and things like that that didn't previously exist. As a child, I had it drilled into me that all you needed to create something useful was empty yoghurt pots, loo roll inserts, sticky back plastic, and the ever elusive washing up liquid bottle. Just stuff that in the right hands, with a bit of time, could be turned into something of value. The same could be said to data. We hold and capture more data than we have ever done, but yet our capacity and capability to convert it into something tangible or useful has not grown at the same rate. Its value is not being realised, but this partnership has provided options for us to be able to develop and operationalise the data we hold. Often options for work and proposals for funding are formed because of newfound relationships and professional connections as a result of this partnership. It brings people with similar interests together, but bringing different means and methods to achieve things. Even now, Cheshire Police has just received funding through the N8 to work on 2 projects, exploring different aspects of policing under COVID-19 pandemic. Things only possible due to networking and being part of the conversation. And the last element here I'll touch on is the concept of the silver bullet. Policing is traditionally short-term focused. Problems need fixing yesterday. We hear statements like, give me 1 or 2 ideas we could do, and I need an idea by next week. This partnership and exposure to it by more and more of my agency increases the understanding and acceptance that the concept of the silver bullet is the work of Disney, and that any work undertaken goes some way to evidence and explain the complexities of policing and societal interactions. In terms of challenges faced, co-production goes some way in overcoming the stigma of the backseat driver, that sense that you must have operational experience to be able to fully understand something, that views, suggestions and input only hold credibility if you've been in the job and experienced it firsthand. It remains a challenge, and it's important that in order for research and learning to be embedded within a force, that there is buy-in from relevant parties from the outset, and that all parties are actively involved in the research process and any resultant activities. That is it, that it isn't just a transaction of data sharing and a report in return. This man, Gerard Houllier, has never kicked a ball professionally in his life, yet led PSG to 3 league titles and saw a small Merseyside club secure a version of a treble in 2001. Interestingly, he started his career as an academic and was a headmaster at the age of 26. It's not always the case that you must have walked the walk to talk the talk. Timeliness continues to be a challenge for us, not necessarily to co-production as a concept, but the relevance of research studies conducted and whether they're considered suitable to be carried out. As already alluded to, policing is about problem solving, and solutions are often required at pace, at times without an evidence base, and often restricted by the notion of what can be done rather than what could be done. There is a risk that long-term studies will lose relevance because of the inability for policing services to stay still. Change is constant and often won't wait for an evidence base. Is it possible for policing to slow down and academia to speed up? Policing itself is a monopoly. When the public call 101 or 999, they don't get a choice as to who comes to their aid, or if anyone even does. However, what would happen if this changed, if policing was more like a business, where the public could choose their provider? Data science and research would undoubtedly play a larger part in how services get delivered efficiently and effectively, and how each force could be better than the next and gain a bigger market share. The reality is this is not where we are. The appetite for research is often concerned in areas of risk or perceived failure, and more general performance improvement opportunities are usurped as a result of limited capacity. This is the first time in a long time for academics and consider an ISA EPA to do so. At least I hope I didn't need to do one. Information sharing and data protection legislation will continue to challenge the co-production efforts. We have a in Cheshire that gets banned out by our DP team. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. And in terms, we should probably look at that from the reverse. Just because we can't doesn't mean we shouldn't. ISAs, I could go on. Recognising this bigger picture and the people involved in it is fundamental, in my opinion, to delivering high-performing research collaborations.
Sorry about that, folks. It looks like we lost the connection there. Why don't we go on to our next presenter while we get her back on. Adam, do you want to introduce the next one?
Steve, yeah, let's move on. Move on now, outside of the N8 partnership directly, to Liz Aston from Napier University, north of the border.
Sorry, Adam, it looks like Karen's back online and sharing her screen again. Karen, can you try your connection again?
Hi, sorry about that. Technical issues here, dropped out. Am I all right picking up, Adam, or do you want me to?
Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I was saying, recognising the bigger picture of the people involved in research is fundamental, in my opinion, of delivering high-performing research collaborations. Each person involved adds a piece of the value, even though it might not be their name or face on the end product. Most would consider any Formula One drivers to be those in the pit crew, but for every race, there's a team of data scientists and analysts sitting in a back office somewhere, looking at all sorts of variables and scenarios to give them the edge. Whilst Red Bull are off around the world, there's a team sat in Milton Keynes during the race, making the magic happen. Another lesson learned is the need to ensure that there is a mechanism to embed the learning from any research studies, whether that be a board, a working group, just something within a force to convert that learning into practice. Through the N8, we were part of a research study with Lancashire University around the challenges of conducting suspect interviews with skilled manipulators. This research project brought back some real tangible benefits to us in terms of things that could be incorporated into our training plans. However, as we had no forum for this type of work to be housed or owned at that time, its value wasn't fully exploited immediately. There is now a board where findings of research work are discussed and resultant work is tasked. In essence, the conversion of theory into practice needs to occur. Something else recognise more and more is that there is more similarity than difference across forces, yet at any one time the same process could be carried out 43 different ways, possibly as a result of best practice recommendations, staff movement or good PR campaigns. Changes in procedures in forces appear to rotate around the country. One force replaces a method while another starts to use it, each no doubt documenting seemingly strong business cases for doing so. There needs to be a greater emphasis placed on sharing learning and research across forces. Just because the research wasn't carried out in a force area doesn't mean there won't be something that can be taken from it. The N8 partnership is placing more emphasis on the need to share learning to all, rather than just isolating it to those parties involved. Through knowledge sharing events and things like the Innovation Forum. At last year's forum, it was apparent that this type of sharing environment proved useful to many with regards to our work on knife crime. Policing isn't very good at creating controlled environments to test change, yet we have more pilots than any airline currently in operation. It's therefore notoriously difficult and problematic for us to link cause and effect with any certainty. Through the partnership and network of members, we're able to seek guidance around the best way for us to carry out evaluations of change, what indicators may hold the most value or worth, and from the outset helping us to articulate and define any problems. Whilst I articulate my main points across the elements of value, challenge and lessons learned, there's clearly an overlap between categories and a thread throughout. Ultimately, if Cheshire Police owns what Cheshire Police knows, we'll see ourselves and our ability to transform and improve both how we operate and our services to communities. The N8 Research Partnership is facilitating the conversion of data and expertise.
Karen, I think we lost you again there towards the end. I'm therefore thank you. I think we got a large amount of what you had to say, and I think the breadth of the issues that you raised. The one that I would particularly underscore that you raised there was about mobilizing data. It seems to me that's a real challenge for the future as well. It's something that we've begun to push against, but I think there's a lot further to go. Let us move on. As I was saying, we're now going to hear from two people working in other police academic partnerships beyond the N8 Policing Research Partnership. First of all, from Liz Aston, Napier University, who is the director of the Scottish Institute for Policing Research. So, Liz, over to you.
Thanks very much, Adam, and thanks for the invitation. I hope you can see my slides now.
Yep.
So just a lot of you will be familiar with CYPR, so I won't go into too much detail, but basically it was established in 2007, and it now brings together, it's a partnership between 14 higher educational institutes in Scotland and the Police Service of Scotland, and also the Scottish Police Authority, the accountability body. It's run through 4 networks, which are represented here in these 4 images. And for more information, our most recent annual report on our website you'll find, and it's a new version of the document, quite engaging. So I hope you'll go to that if anyone's interested to see more information. Just trying to move between my slides here. It's not. Oh, there we go. So when I came in as director in 2018, we developed a new mission statement for CYPR, which is supporting internationally excellent multidisciplinary policing research to enable evidence-informed policy and practice. Our main 4 areas of work, our aims are around research, knowledge exchange, learning and innovation, and partnerships. So I'll just use some of these to reflect on some of the challenges as I was asked to for this presentation. One challenge, and this picks up on what Stephen Brookes was saying, is around innovation and linking research into innovation, which is all too often the realm of big consultancy firms within policing. Another challenge for us is around education. We don't have the PEQF, which Mike Cunningham mentioned, and that brings a lot of opportunities as well as challenges. It brings a lot of opportunities for co-production, and I'm aware of some of the exciting work going on, for example, with Northumbria University and some of the programs that they have there. Some other fundamental challenges that are raised that I would that links to what Adam was saying earlier as well is in relation to independence. So we can explore this more in the discussion groups, but can one be critical and independent whilst collaborating with the police and receiving funding for them? And I argue that yes, you can be. You can be both constructive and critical. And indeed, isn't that one of the main advantages of policing academic partnerships to the police, that you're able to partner and have independent research done? So it shouldn't be watered down, and any challenge to independence should be called out, although there are various dilemmas there. I think that's where values come in. So at CYPR, we've developed over the last couple of years some values to underpin the way we work, which is collaborative, independent and analytical, inclusive, transparent, innovative and supportive. And these must be underpinned in processes and be demonstrable in the way that we operate. And this is where governance processes and quality assurance mechanisms come in. So in terms of how we achieve our central mission of evidence-informed policy and practice in policing, or as Mike Cunningham said, change, governance is central. We've developed a new robust collaboration agreement, which all partners have signed up to. Our key partners have representation on all our governance groups and network steering committees. We have another key aspect is sustained routine interactions. As Nutley et al. Concluded, interactive approaches that strengthen links are the most effective way to improve the use of research by public services. So, for example, Cyprus supported conferences on public health leading up to the International Conference on Law Enforcement and Public Health, and that had an important role in bringing opportunities for co-production and developing Police Scotland's public health policing principles and feeding into areas around drug policy as well. In terms of infrastructure, whilst success is ultimately relational and built and developed on relationships between people, we need the formal infrastructure that helps police academic partnerships sustain through challenging times, for example, changes to police leadership. We need also the staff resource at the core function of your policing academic partnership, which links people together. We also need that core function in policing. That core function in policing to make those links can enable. However, we have to have checks in place to make sure that the gatekeeper function of those within policing doesn't make access more difficult or dry up direct links to strategic and operational areas of policing. So I think that's a challenge that we face. Planning is key. This can involve genuine co-production and allow key stakeholders to demonstrate value in line with their policing priorities. So, for example, we've developed a new strategic plan for the next 5 years and a new annual planning process, which is agreed and developed through the executive committee. We have also developed 3 shared research priority areas, which link into strategic objectives for policing, but are academically led. Representation is another key way of achieving impact and change, such as CYPA representation on key policing boards, advisory groups, reference groups. That's a key vehicle for knowledge exchange for us. And we have some really good examples of that in terms of CYPA's involvement in cyber kiosks or digital triage improvements, input to the drug strategy board and the lockdown tested change delivery steering group at the moment, for example. In terms of this shared mission of why I think we're all working in this space, which is to drive positive social change, or as Mike Cunningham said, leading change. If we take some of the complex vulnerabilities, and I'm speaking to the image here on the left, I would argue that in relation to some of these complex vulnerability issues being discussed at this N8 conference, if we think about how to prevent violence, respond to mental health or drug use, we need to take a whole systems approach in policing. So should police academic partnerships should we not be extending our partnerships into other partnerships beyond policing in order to bring about real change, even if it's in less informal ways than our structured funded partners? And in terms of the image on the other side, in terms of bringing change to practice, I would argue that in terms of recent reforms in Scotland to stop and search policy and practice, for example, academic research and knowledge exchange was central to that, from Kath Murray's PhD research to work, for example, that Megan O'Neill and I did, and all of us were involved then in knowledge exchange mechanisms. Research and knowledge exchange was a key part of that journey, but accountability bodies had a role, politics and the media had a key role in bringing change, and you also require leadership in policing, new policies, training, and ideally for real change, as we argue in our 2019 article, for real change to the habitus of officers, we need an organisationally just approach to engaging the front line, and that is about leadership, it's about consultation, it's about a bottom-up approach. So in terms of some final reflections, when it comes to austerity and sustainability, As Bacon et al. Argued, alliances are certainly fragile. We have an impending and looming and growing financial crisis, and in this realm, it's very important not to move into siloed working and withdraw collaboration, both across public sector agencies and between police and academics. Yes, there are tensions and dilemmas around independence, being critical, being constructive, but there are also shared challenges, I would argue, as I did in the N8 annual report this year, around, for example, when it comes to COVID and physical distancing, shared challenges across academia and policing. For example, in relation to diversity and challenging systemic racism, improving Black and minority ethnic diversity in policing, academia, and indeed in policing academic partnerships. I would argue that in order to bring real change, we need to extend our partnership beyond policing. We need to better engage frontline officers, and within policing academic partners, we need to focus more on public engagement. And we have a role in developing and enhancing and supporting informed public debate, and possibly even calling out and challenging public media and political opinion. In terms of infrastructure to support and provide scrutiny to policing the pandemic, I've argued in the EMU fall edition with Megan O'Neill and Penny Woolna that the sustained impact of formal long-term partnerships has allowed us in Scotland to collate evidence and support policing responses to the pandemic. We've provided support to the Independent Advisory Group on Temporary Police Powers, and weekly meetings with Police Scotland's Optical Group, which is around information collation and assurance related to Operation Tala. Indeed, also prior reform in the area of stop and search, which I referred to earlier, has facilitated and supported scrutiny of the policing of the pandemic. And that has involved engagements with research, the governance processes, recording and data on police powers from stop and search, now informing policing of COVID, such as the CVI system, and transparency and availability of data. So to conclude, I think a challenge of policing academic partnerships is both how to be constructive and critical and provide input on key policing issues. That is a key challenge, but we also have opportunities. And when it comes to societal challenges, such as policing of COVID, or indeed areas around drug policy, big societal challenges may provide opportunities for us to reflect on, and with other key partners, push for real change and positive reform in the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Liz, thank you very much. We're going to move on now to our final contribution from Nicky Miller from the Centre for Policing and Research and Learning at the Open University. But I'm very pleased to welcome Nicky back, because Nicky, for the first half of the Catalyst grant, was a College of Policing representative that acted as a sounding board and with sage advice to us in the early years of the Catalyst grant. So it's a delight for me to hand over to Nicky Miller.
Right, thanks, Adam. Can everybody hear me all right and see my screen? Yeah, great. Okay. Hi. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm now the Director of Knowledge into Practice at the Centre for Policing Research and Learning at the OU, a police collaboration that, like the N8, was actually first established in 2014. I've been directly employed at the OU for just under 2 years, but as Adam's just said, previous to that, I was at the College of Policing, where my role was to facilitate the development of a number of police academic collaborations through, for example, the Police Knowledge Fund. So consequently, today I'm just kind of very briefly presenting on the lessons learned and the challenges faced through such collaborations based on both my past and my present experiences. So for those of you who don't know, the Centre was established, as I said, in 2014 with a small Catalyst grant from the College of Policing. And it started with 5 force partners and a handful of OU academics. And now in 2020 has expanded to a collaboration with 22 forces and more than 50 academics drawn from across the OU. And as this slide shows, collaboration and co-production, like many of the partnerships we've already heard from here, is at the heart of the Centre's approach. It's about the creation of high quality academic work, which is rigorous, but also usable by police, having an impact on both policing policy and practice for the benefit of society. Like other collaborations, it's not the police commissioning research or academics telling the police what's in their best interest, but instead we're adopting a mode 2 collaboration where we're bringing together police and academics to work on specific real-world problems and helping to embed the solutions in practice. It's about really recognising and respecting the value that each party brings, while also challenging each other about our assumptions, our evidence base, our practices. We're very much a mix of different organisations with different areas of expertise, so we do have some shared goals in some areas and we're divergent in others. And I think, coming back to what Liz just said, having that degree of tension sometimes, that conflict, is helpful, as long as it's obviously aired in a respectful way and helps us to avoid groupthink. So the central tenet of the CPRL, the Centre, is research into practice and practice into research, and it combines the best of both the academic and the police perspectives on a range of ongoing challenges, research questions, as well as educational opportunities. There's very much a two-way benefit of this approach, ensuring the value and the relevance of research, and most importantly, its translation into practice. And our research, our co-produced research, is then reinforced through educational and learning pathways and shared and embedded through knowledge exchange activities. So this slide here just shows you, for example, some of the recent achievements from the Centre. Our annual report for 2020 will be out imminently. So you can see, just to give you a flavour a flavour of some of the things that we've accomplished. There are 20 ongoing research projects, and these have been planned and developed collaboratively between the police and the OU academics and co-produced with our partner forces across our 4 key research themes. We produce a number of modules, both accredited and non-accredited. For example, with PSNI, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, we've just developed some collaborative problem solving for community safety, kind of a series of learning. And that's been accompanied by a techniques library of community problem solving techniques in both hard copy and as an ebook. And other forces who are part of this partnership are then able to badge and use that handbook. We have a number of part-time police officers and staff, 11 this year, undertaking PhDs whose projects are match funded from the Centre. And topics there vary from a variety of fields, including using systems complexity science and exploring the role of online dating and sexual offending and so on. I think what's important here, though, for me, is this slide here provides, I think, some of the reasons why we think that the Centre partnership works, why it's innovative, why it's valuable. Obviously, haven't got time to go through each of them in any detail, but for us, I think these are some of the ingredients that we feel have reflect a successful partnership and are based upon the lessons learned over our last few years. It's a culture of engagement. It's a genuine, long-lasting partnership built on collective aims and values with a clear vision to attract commitment, a collation of common purpose and respect for and understanding of what the different partners and their needs. There's very much a mutual sharing of knowledge, skills and insights with joint selections, solutions and new ways of working, and joint planning, action on research, knowledge exchange and so forth. I think as well, all our work is designed, steered and evaluated collaboratively. We have a very strong governance structure that includes our Police Advisory Review Board, which is made up of 11 Chief Constables plus the same sort of level of cross-sector executive representation. We have quarterly membership groups, which are chaired by the police, which I think is quite different, and focuses on strategic themes of relevance to policing and avoids that kind of drift into consultancy. We have a steering group that advises the membership group on decisions. We also have, because we've got 50 plus academics, an internal centre hub, which is comprised of 2 representatives, academic representatives from each of our 4 faculties. So business and law, which looks at particularly police leadership, people and organisations, our arts and social sciences, particularly looking at psychology and criminology, wellbeing, education, languages, as well as STEM, looking at computing and knowledge media across the OU. And these academics act as a connection between the Centre and other central academics across the university. So it's a very democratic way that things are decided on at the Centre rather than the loudest voice. I also think that the size, breadth and depth of the partnership, both from a police and academic perspectives, gives us a scope for learning at scale between police partners and from the research studies. The breadth of our academic disciplines provides the opportunity to expand our scope of thinking in force and has a very clear multiplier effect for our partners. They can access capacity beyond their own funding commitment, as well as providing leverage and intelligence in relation to grant applications. Our membership represents over 60% of the policing workforce, We have a very diverse range of police forces across the UK, large and small variety of contexts, as well as OU academics, as I said before, coming from across the university with a variety of disciplines. So this multidisciplinary nature of the partnership covers a number of operational and organisational aspects of policing. And I think really most important is our synergies between education, research and knowledge exchange. It provides a really rich opportunity for academic and practitioner work, as well as a valuable inter-organisational learning network for police. Within knowledge exchange, we have developed a range of mechanisms by which we exchange knowledge within and across the partnership, both formal and informal. And coming to my last slide, sorry, so some of the challenges going forward. I think these are obviously, I can't talk at them at depth, but for me, it's very much about a focus on bridging the gap between research and practice. As one of our police advisory research contributors said recently, we need to pass the Heineken test, that research is reaching the parts of policing that it needs to reach. Knowledge exchange is great and we're very good at that, but I think it's not just about creating the new knowledge and exchanging it through research, but also exploring how it can be put into practice and what stops it getting into practice. And this, as we've heard already, is much more complicated in organisations than is sometimes assumed. I think one of our key challenges is doing a lot more in the translation and mobilising of the knowledge produced through the partnership. I think it's about responsiveness. We need to be able to respond to changing demands of our partners very rapidly, and COVID is an example in point. But how do we maintain the balance between our ability to respond in quick time while not being a superficial approach and veering into consultancy, against the need to ensure that the research is robust and of high quality to meet our partners' needs? It's about partnership engagement. I think we all can say that one of the things that we've learned, whether we're N8, Cyber or the OU, is not to rest on your laurels. Partnerships take work, and there's much work that needs to be put into sustaining a partnership as there is in setting it up. And linked to this for us particularly is the challenge of extending and deepening our partnership more, being able to promote the centre across our partner forces, going a lot more deeper to all levels, including the front line, and being much more visible. We need to ensure our engagement is not just about interaction, but leads to products. It's also about developing our internal capability. How can we ensure that academics with expertise learn to work professionally with partners, developing collaborative skills? And how do we ensure we support the development of police inside forces? For example, not just about research, but expanding the scope of management and leadership thinking. And finally, I think again, a challenge for all of us, it's demonstrating that sustained impact and return on investment. We need improved evaluation and monitoring, I think, of the health of the partnership. We need to help our force partners make the business case, for example, about specifically what they get out of the membership. And we need to keep this going on a constant level. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to stop there and hand back to Adam.
Nicky and all panelists, thank you very much, and thank you for keeping